But there is one thing we can definitely talk about, and it is the fact that the impact and the meaning of the at least for this part of conversation, we can focus on that, the original trilogy. Okay. And I mentioned it earlier, at least once a year, the freaking stands, the Disney Star Wars stands, somebody somewhere will, whether it's them or not, will bring up Star Wars and politics. And right away, the stands in mass, and it's always the same motherfuckers all over and over again, will always go, Star Wars was always political. It was always political.
In-world politics are not the same as real-world politics, and allegory is not the same as smashing you in the face with a fucking agenda.
Thank you.
I don't believe in the all politics. Everything has been political from people who can't tell the difference between Metal Gear and a Family Guy joke.
And that's the point. There's politics and there's political themes. And right now, during this going on right now, these geniuses think they have the winner. They dig up, and this is one of those retard accounts, Star Wars Facts. George Lucas on politics, this is what they think. Because here's the one that started it recently. Anyone who thinks George Lucas is a political writer is not a serious person. This is the one that started it a week or so ago, okay? And they all come out of the woodworks, and this guy thinks he gets the own, bringing up George Lucas talking about his inspiration. So let's listen to this, and I'm going to ask your opinion on it. So let's listen to what George has to say.
The story, the political backstory was written 30 years ago. It was written during the Vietnam War and in the Richard Nixon era.
Now he's talking about the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy, but in general.
Okay.
I didn't want to do a movie about how people take over democracy. I wanted to figure out how democracies give themselves over to tyrants. And, like after the Roman Senate killed Caesar, why did they turn the whole thing over to his nephew? Here's an interesting thing about democracy is if you don't treat it well, if you don't do your job, especially if you're a representative in the Senate or the Parliament or whatever, the whole thing can go awry, because if you're always bickering and not agreeing on things and doing the people's work who elected you, a tyrant will come in and take over and do it for you, because the people want to get the job done, and they will tend to go where the person who's got the most leadership is. The story, the political.
Okay, so in what he just said, did you hear anything in that about politics? I heard political themes, political history.
Yeah,
I didn't hear politics. Go ahead, Bug.
Yeah, the way he describes it, it sounds more of a cautionary tale of like how you lead. Like how because like he describes it like, oh yeah, you gotta have rulers who are not just always bickering. Otherwise, there's gonna be some guy, in this case Palpatine, who sneaks in. He's in, and he'll take over. That's what it is. It just looked more of a cautionary tale, and he says he was inspired by Nixon and Vietnam and all of that, which is like, okay, that's what it was. He was inspired by that, and he incorporated it in the theme. Like it's more of a just like be careful, like cautionary tale. That's all I got. It wasn't like, oh, political, whatever.
At that point, he's not saying, I believe in this political theory, I believe in that political theory, and I've woven it into every aspect of my creation so that you're hammered over the head by my political beliefs. Because, Samuel, the original trilogy, let's go through each of them right now. A New Hope. Is there an ounce of politics in A New Hope?
I would say that there's probably some, but it's mostly it's mostly like military politics, like the meeting where Vader and the various Imperial military guys are sitting around the table discussing stuff. There's political stuff going on there, but it's in world politics. It's not, like if you wanted to find an allegory, you could probably look at maybe because let's face it, they're space Nazis. Yes. one of Hitler's war councils or something like.
All that on
there. Yeah, it's essentially like Goebbels, arguing with Himmler at the table.
Mm-hmm. But
Right.
that's still a theme. That's not
Sure.
this is what I believe, and I'm making you listen to what I believe. I'm not preaching at you through this movie. There's the difference. You're describing a political scene of how this political structure, this government, how the Moffs and Tarkin and Vader are bickering. That's just an example of how something would happen in a room of politicians like that, or in this case,
Mhm.
military governors.
Right.
It's
It's like
not
something you
saying,
see at the Pentagon with the Joint Chiefs.
but it's not. As I said, it's not saying I believe in fascism or I believe in this. I believe in that. These are
No, not
my
at all.
ideological beliefs. It's not there at all. But is there any of that in A New Hope at all? Outside of again, in the beginning, when you hear that Palpatine has dissolved the Imperial Senate,
No,
and
no,
he is
man. There's more
yeah.
religious context than there is political
Okay,
context. In
okay, that's a different discussion. That's a whole different
Yeah.
discussion with that. But we're staying on the politics thing. So, but there's none in the New
But
Hope. Go,
again,
sorry.
that would be in world though too. It's not
Mhm.
like they're saying, "Hey, we support this specific religion." They're saying,
Yes,
"Hey, there's this religion that exists in the movie, and there are adherents to it, but there's only a few left." And it's
Yeah.
about it's essentially about a boy discovering religion, actually.
different discussion. Different discussion. Different discussion. But my point is, though, it's not saying George Lucas, who is probably a man of the left. Let's not fool ourselves here. We're not going to pretend that he's, as the jokes go, wearing a MAGA hat and busting down doors and saying, "I'm going to save Star Wars from Kathleen Kennedy and Bob Iger." Not doing that. But he never injected whatever his personal beliefs are into the movie. He simply, as he says here, used the template of real world events, whether it is the events of World War II or the events of Vietnam, and said, I'm going to use this structure of how something went and tell a story in that framework of reality, of political history, and how these things
Well, sure.
continually play out. So in A New Hope, no actual agenda, ideological politics are in play. True or false?
I would say probably false. They were telling a story. They weren't trying to. That's what I'm getting at. Is like
Yeah.
the real world stuff wasn't present. Like, yeah, he
Yeah.
was drawing allegory to real world events, historical. That's
Yeah.
sure, but that was he was telling his story, the story he wanted to tell,
Yeah.
and the politics that exist in that universe belong to that universe.
To make a perfect example, 1977 to 1983, there was no representation of Jimmy Carter in A New Hope. There was no representation of Ronald Reagan in Empire or Jedi. There was
No representation of Nixon.
no representation of Nixon in the prequel trilogy, which is this is what he's directly talking about here. I mean, so let's move on to Empire Strikes Back. Is there any real world political ideologies injected into that? In fact, there's nothing at all.
Yeah, I mean, like, wasn't it like right around the 70s when?
No, 80.
Eight-
Empire is 80.
Okay, so wasn't the Black Panther Party kind of like big right around that time, or was that earlier?
That's earlier.
Okay, so it wouldn't. So there was no representation of the Black Panther Party.
No,
Or
but I mean,
Lando.
no. Lando's capitalism. Lando's capitalism.
And honestly, nobody saw Lando was black. They just saw him as
No.
Lando.
We saw Billy D. Williams with a Colt 45. That's what we saw.
Yeah.
But there's no politics, not even an ounce of politics in Empire Strikes Back. It's all friendship, betrayal, somewhat little business, and training and belief. It's still, Samuel's point, a lot more of the expansion on the idea of the faith aspect, believing in the Force, trusting in the Force, stuff like that, but no politics. So we're 2 movies into the original trilogy now, and there is no political agenda on display. And now Return of the Jedi. I asked the same question. Any political agenda on display in Return of the Jedi?
I gave the same answer. It's there's more focus on religion in that movie than there is on politics. The politics were really not on display. I mean, at that point, they were past the point of talking about shit anyway, right?
Yeah,
Like the war was in full swing. So like political shit didn't come into it. It was like you're on this side or you're on that side, and one of us has to die. That's it.
And there's the point. In the original trilogy, politics is not even at play in anything. So these people who say Star Wars is always political, there is no politics in the original trilogy. Not really. No discussion, no nothing. You get a little bit of political theming in A New Hope, but it fades away as the stories become character driven and other aspects that we just mentioned. Now we go to the prequel trilogy. Samuel, hold on to your chair. I know what you're going to think. Prequel trilogy, jam-packed with political themes. What he essentially described in this conversation, or because he was directly talking about the prequel trilogy, political themes, but no ideology. In Phantom Menace, where's the ideology? I mean, we've got
no ideology because it was
talk
mostly
about trade.
Yeah.
We talk about elections. We talk about a vote of no confidence and stuff like that. But that's a political process. And that's showing corruption in politics. It's not saying this is what I believe. I believe in this party. I believe in that party. I believe in this ism. I believe in that ism. No, it's not there.
Yeah, no, because it was just it was more or less a simple story about like, hey, here's this region. Naboo was getting taken over by this big faction, and they go out to the government to be like, hey, can you help us? But the process is too slow. And it's like, if anything, it was just a lesson of, hey, don't rely on the fucking government to help you out. Like, fix your own problem.
And at the same time, it's now setting the stage for here comes the tyrant he mentions, as the tyrant is now slowly manipulating the corruption of the government in order to take control and take over, i.e. Palpatine, Sidious. Okay, Attack of the Clones. That's war. That's not politics. That's war.
Well,
it's not ideology.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So,
go ahead.
I'm having trouble remembering is Order 66 and Attack of the Clones or Revenge of the Sith?
That's Revenge of the Sith.
That's Revenge of the Sith.
Okay. Yeah, that's. I mean, aside from the various factions like backbiting each other and trying to get one up on each other, which is politics, but it's not. Again, it's not an insertion
ideology
of real world politics into the material so much as it is an exploration of what's happening in that world due to the various circumstances and factions.
It's not ideology. It's not agenda, and it's simply what happens when a world is manipulated into a conflict so somebody can grab power. That's still a political theme. A dictator, an emperor, an overlord consolidating his power through destruction and breaking things down. Okay, Revenge of the Sith. This is the corruption complete, the takeover. And their favorite line they always love to pull out is Padme going, "This is how democracy falls," to thunderous applause.
Well, it's true, but
yes, but it's still a political theme.
It's a political theme, and as like George says, like if your leaders are too busy bickering to solve a problem, there's gonna come a guy who's gonna come in and they'll vote for that guy because and that's what it was. It was like all the culmination of everything going on. Palpatine like doing his 4D chess moves finally got to the point, and like. With Order 66, he kicked that off, riled up the people, to it, and, provided them, the solution. Hey, set me in place as your permanent leader, and none of this crazy shit that happens is going to happen again. There you go.
He uses the Jedi as a scapegoat. And I mean, he does all the classic things a dictator does, but it's still political themes. It's not, as Samuel keeps saying, it's not real world politics. It's not real world agendas and ideologies on display. It's not George telling you this is what I believe and you need to like what I believe. You need to believe what I believe. It's none of that. So we've gone through the 6 movies that George made. There is not an ounce of what the stands always say. Star Wars is always political. We haven't found a single evidence of where it's what they call political, of real world agenda injected into here because you have to believe that George is all for everything that I'm for because I believe in this ideology. No, it's not there.
Yeah, because it's
Not there.
because these people want to they want to taint the very word of politic, because that's what it is, because there's a very distinct difference between political themes, which was what was George doing, and the political ideology, which is like what later shit stuff we get now is, where it's just like it has the
Ryan
subtlety
Johnson
of
does, what Kathleen Kennedy does, where
it has
all
the
of them do.
subtlety of a brick going in your face.
Yeah. I won't say that Jar Jar Abrams does it because he's just a hack and he just copies what other people does. But there is ideology in what Kathleen Kennedy pushes into Disney Star Wars. Dave Filoni, he does it in everything he does. All of them for all the Disney Star Wars shows. It's all in there. I've reviewed a lot of it. You can go back and watch it. I pointed out. You can't point any of those things out in George Lucas Star Wars because it's not there. So this particular topic I brought up for this, it's never going to go away because there are always going to be retards who believe that Star Wars is always political. Because like you guys have made it very clear, they can't see the difference. To them, everything, their whole world's political because they're steeped in their ideology. They're steeped in their broken belief systems. That if you don't believe what I believe, you're my enemy, and we can never reach compromise. We can never discussion. Of course, there is no compromise with a commie. You take a commie about Outback and you introduce them to a hot barrel. But when it comes to actual normal political discussion, that's how things actually work when compromise happens. And that is not what people like who say Star Wars is political believe. They believe you have to do what I say, and if you don't, I'm going to call you all sorts of names. And I'm going to try and make sure that you get canceled and suffer because you don't believe my ideology, and you're my enemy. And I'm gonna call you what likely I actually am. So I hate it that we have to keep revisiting this, but this is what it is. These people are broken. Go ahead.
Here's the thing. It's like, yeah, George might be a bit of a lefty. So was Rod Serling. So was Gene Roddenberry,
Yes.
right? But they still managed to present you with something that allowed you to draw your own conclusions if you chose to look at it from an allegorical point of view. If you didn't, it still presented an interesting conundrum, and they never presumed to tell you what to think. None of these guys did. Never presumed to tell you what to think or which side to pick, which is the problem. That's the problem right there, is that the new people are absolutely telling you what the side is that you need to be on. And that's first of all, that's shit storytelling.
I can sum this up pretty easily. George Lucas just didn't take his dirty laundry to work. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's that's what we are getting at. We're getting people bringing their dirty laundry to work, and we have to see the fucking skid marks. Like that's why there's a saying: don't bring your laundry to work, man. No one wants to see the skid marks. No one wants to see the dirty shirts and the used socks, man. Like, I don't want to see that here. Like, they left that shit at home. George Lucas left that at home. He can do whatever politic thing he wants on his own time or whatever. But when it came down to, like, writing the story, he left that shit at home.
And the perfect example of someone who didn't, Leslie Headland. She brought all her shit into The Acolyte. Every goddamn ounce of it.
Every skid mark in the fucking world.
Every bruise, broken bone, every bit of propaganda she could squeeze into that show. She brought it in there. God. Yeah, that's an excellent way to put it. These creatives, like Samuel said, Roddenberry, they believed certain things, but they also believed in entertainment and putting out a good product, as did George.
They were actually creative too, I might add.
Oh yeah. And they understood that after a certain point that what I've created will be lasting, and therefore I want it to be timeless. It comes back to a discussion we've had in the past. What George Lucas created, his Star Wars, is timeless. What Gene Roddenberry helped birth with Star Trek, real Star Trek, is timeless. what Rod Sterling did with Twilight Zone,
And Night Gallery.
but the questions that those shows make you think about, those are timeless questions, morality questions. There's nothing wrong with that.
And,
What they-
it even works better with the Lucas because he in this clip he's saying, "Oh yeah, I was inspired by stuff like Vietnam and
It's the word.
Nixon," but he took that and he
Yeah.
made that into a timeless thing.
I mean, George took inspiration from a lot of things that came before him, but then he recrafted it and gave his own spin on it. Listen, I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. All of us who are creatives, whether you're writing a novel or a comic book or developing a game or making music, so many things have come before us and have been done. There's no escaping repeating things. The trick is, will your version be a fresh take? Will it be interesting? Can you change it enough that you're creating something new and adding to the chorus instead of just playing as a part of the chorus and getting swallowed up and not doing anything creative, or coming in and just bashing it up and saying, "Oh, here's my new shit, and I'm going to piss on everything that came before me with disrespect," which is what current day does. And it's going to be up to those of us, I think, who have been gatekept from joining what we thought we wanted to be a part of with the mainstream. It's going to be up to us to usher in the next generation of fascinating, original, fun, exciting new IPs and franchises. And it's there. We're all doing it. We're just doing it in different stages. We can't all have had the foresight of, let's just say, Eric July to build up enough of his own personal business so he could fund it himself up to a point and get it started with Rippaverse. Some of us had these ideas but came to it very late in the game, myself being one of them, and I'm simply playing catch up, trying to get to a point where I can give you my product. It's just simply, we're all getting there. I mean, Bug, you're getting close.
Yeah, I'm getting pretty close with my comic. Like, I'm getting to the stage where I can get to release it and whatnot, but it took a while. I mean, not only just to hammer down the details, but then just to get things working. Like,
it's about resources and time and having an audience ready for your product. You can't just put it out there and hope. You have to build your audience, which is what I've been doing for the past 4 years now. I'm trying to build my audience, get you guys interested. And what George Lucas did, what Gene Roddenberry did, what all these great creative men did is that they gave a product, and as soon as the audience latched onto it, they saw it and they gave you more of what you wanted. And they kept building it, and they were good caretakers of their own product. And in some cases, like Gene Roddenberry, he created a system where there were other good creatives who took it over and still made great stuff. Because perfect example, because every Sunday I sit down and I watch an episode of DS9 with Duke Devil, Bradley Burnett, Jay Fraxford, and Jay Hitman. We sit down, we watch DS9. Roddenberry's not there anymore by the time we get there. But DS9 is one of the greatest things in Star Trek ever. It's incredible. But he's not there anymore. But there were men who took his lessons to heart and still created something grand after he was gone to carry on the legacy. George may not have written a single word of the expanded universe, but he oversaw it. Nothing that came out, let me zoom in myself for a second here, nothing on that shelf right there happened without his express permission. Not a single arc, not a single storyline. He may have complained about this or that there, but it all happened with his permission, saying, do this, don't do this. Allow this, don't allow this. Don't go over here, go over there. Don't do this because I'm doing this now. That's how it worked. He was a good caretaker for his own product. And the problem is, now that we are in these past 10 years now, we've had people who are bad caretakers. And these are people who believe in agenda-driven storytelling, not escapism storytelling. And they have pandered to the people who think Star Wars was always political, to think that Star Trek was always this or that, kind of the same line of thing. It was always preaching this or always preaching that. When, as Samuel well knows, already said, no, Star Trek its calling card was letting you come to a conclusion. No, not going to beat you over the head with a single answer. Let you, the audience, enjoy it and come up with an answer. But we don't have that anymore. Not in Star Trek, not in Star Wars, not in Doctor Who, not in anything. Because the current day caretakers are the people who think politics is everything, ideology is everything. Well, cross your fingers. Hope that we survive this era and come out the other side in one piece where new things can take over and give us quality entertainment going forward.
Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, check out my gaming channel at Renaissance Nerd Arcade, and follow me on X Twitter under @TheRedNerd. Thanks again for watching. Take it easy.